At the beginning of the episode, 3 scientists drive to a beach, while one of them, named Steven, narrates about a naked, dead giant. The day before, a massive storm had hit the sea, which washed up a dead body of a giant to the shore. The surprised local fishermen contacted the officials, who at first refused to believe such atrocious news. But as people began to visit the beach and return home with crazy stories, the scientists decided to go see for themselves. And so, Steven and his colleagues, who thought that everyone was just bluffing about the dead giant, now stand before him. A crowd surrounds the corpse, scared to touch it before being absolutely sure that it's safe. Steven's colleagues guess that the man weighs somewhere around 80 tons. Steven narrates that the vast proportion of his features makes it difficult for them to figure out his age, but looking at the giant's defined nose and mouth, he believes that he had been a young man with a modest temper. The 3 go around the giant's body, inspecting him. Steven sees a pool of water that had been collected in the corpse's palm, where tiny fishes swim. Steven says that beyond the size of the giant, the simple fact that he exists surprises him the most. He compares the giant's existence to the crowd on the beach, and concludes that they are just imperfect and puny copies of him. As Steven looks at the creature, mesmerized, his colleague climbs on top of the corpse's chest and waves towards the crowd, indicating that it is safe to come near it. The people run towards him while cheering and climb up on top. Some of them comment that the body is rubbery and bouncy. Children start playing on his chest, trashing it with their shoes. Steven, however, doesn't touch or climb on it. He and his colleagues stare at the giant from afar while writing their notes. As time passes by, the people get enough of playing with the dead giant, and everyone returns home. After 3 days, Steven visits the beach again. Because of his growing interest in the giant, his facility assigns him the role of keeping tabs on it. Steven claims that he wasn't morbid about keeping an eye on a dead person because, for him, the giant was more alive than the people around him. He watches as kids play slide on the corpse's chest, and some workers plan to butcher his femur bone. The following day, Steven deliberately postponed his visit to the beach until late afternoon so that no one would be around. When he gets there, the corpse looks in bad form and has started to decay. A teenage girl sits comfortably on the giant's ear, using it as a chair. Steven notices that the giant's face has a much less youthful look than it had before. He assumes it is because of prolonged immersion in seawater and tumefaction of tissue. As a crab crawls out of the giant's mouth, the scientist claims that it won't be long until he decays fully. Steven finally gets the courage to set foot on the corpse. Atop his chest, he sees a sandcastle someone had built. Then, his other arm comes into view, showing us that half of it has already decayed, and whatever remained of it has been taken away by the people. Meanwhile, his cornea has become hazy and cloudy, which gives his eyes a whirlpool effect. Steven looks at them, saying that the giant's suffering is less tragic than this isolation that he is facing. The next time he visits the giant, both of his arms and one of his legs have decayed and been cut. Steven walks around, looking at the corpse, which has been vandalized by teens who spray paint insults on his body. He is reluctant to witness the end of the magnificent creature, but the insults make him feel that the creature is more human, because it seems more vulnerable to him now. When Steven comes to the beach the following day, he is almost relieved to see that the corpse's head has been removed. Birds eat its flesh as Steven watches it from afar. Without the head, the corpse looked less human, which reduces Steven's relationship with the corpse that he had formed. After that day, he doesn't visit the beach for a few weeks. On his next journey, he witnesses that any feature indicating that the corpse was once human has vanished. The only thing that remains is the decaying gut of the once magnificent creature. By now, the interest of the crowd in the giant has expired. Months later, after the giant's arrival has been forgotten, various pieces of his body can be seen around town, especially his bones, which are used as decorations. While cycling one day, Steven notices the giant's skull lying abandoned. He believes that if he looks around the town's pubs, he will find mummified noses and ears as well. According to Steven, these decorations convey the giant's greatness, better than Steven's memory of his bloated and decaying appendages. As for the giant's genitals, it is shown that it had been cut off and placed in the Freak Museum in a circus. Steven narrates that the apparatus occupies a whole tent to itself, but is sadly mislabeled as belonging to a whale. At last, the scientist says that the people who saw the giant remember him only as a sea monster. However, for him, the giant is still alive, and he often dreams of his resurrection. In his dreams, the giant strides through the town, picking up his fragments on his return journey to the sea. The episode, although short, has a deep and metaphorical meaning in every scene. The fans of the episode have interpreted it their own way, but many believe that the narrator Stephen is the giant himself. Stephen feels the pain of the dead giant when no one else can. So, some fans think that Stephen and the giant are the same person. The giant might be trying to communicate through Stephen. Moreover, the way Stephen describes several stages of the decaying of the corpse in such detail makes one wonder if he is the one going through the stages. The decaying of the giant's corpse is also seen as a metaphor for several things. The narrator, Stephen, observes the decaying of the corpse very closely at every stage. First, he sees the process that was supposed to happen, that is, his body decaying by the passage of time. Then he notices people starting to amputate the corpse, treating it as a commodity. And the way humans treat him poorly showed him the extent of consumerism and exploitation that is considered normal in today's world. As the story progresses, Stephen begins to question what it means to be human, and when do we decide that we have lost humanity? Until the corpse had no head, he thought of it as a human just like him and the others around him. In fact, he believed that the giant was more of a human than tiny creatures like himself. However, after Stephen's sympathy towards the giant dropped, when he saw him only as a mass of flesh. Throughout the episode, we do not know who the giant is or where he came from. Rather, the drowned giant focuses more on the contrast of Stephen and other people's feelings towards the giant. In the book itself, J.G. Ballard concludes with the detail about the giant's appendage being displayed in a circus. This is to emphasize how much the giant was humiliated, even though he possessed a greater existence than them all. It also denotes humans' superficial and exploitative nature. Moreover, his genitals were labeled to be of a whale's, and his bones were mere decorations for the people. Here, it is clear that the giant has been completely stripped of his humanity. However, Stephen describes the genitals and decorated bones as the only things that convey how magnificent of a being the giant was. Although he loves and remembers the creature more than anyone else, he believes that his memory of his decaying body would have never conveyed his greatness the way his preserved body parts do. The giant was just a myth before being washed up to the shore. People experienced his arrival for a short while, but forgot about him soon, turning his existence into a myth once again. We humans, like the giant, will someday fade away and remain only in the memories of the people we met. But eventually, those memories will fade as well, and we simply cease to exist. Whew, boy, that got dark. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.